Today, I'm going to show you how to paint a cozy Christmas tree covered in beautiful ornaments with little gift boxes at the bottom and lots of snowy, sparkly effects. I'll share some of my favorite watercolor tips and tricks that I use in my own holiday projects, like masking fluid and salt textures. And we'll also try a few fun mixed media touches, including splattering snow with white gouache and adding delicate details with a gel pen. Up on top, I've laid down the colors that I would absolutely recommend for this project, and at the bottom are some optional, more vivid pigments that you can add for fun and some visual interest. All of these are listed in the video description along with the rest of my materials. Don't worry, you can absolutely follow along with whatever materials you already have. This is a relaxing, decorative project, so have fun, experiment, keep the techniques you love, skip what doesn't fit your style, and make this tree completely your own. In my professional work, I've had the chance to design all kinds of festive artwork, from the red Starbucks holiday cup to Canadian collectible coins, including this silver and gold Christmas tree coin with a tiny moving train. So I'm really excited to share my approach with you. Let's get started. And before we begin painting, I just want to mention that it's helpful to tape the edges of your paper with some masking tape. It's especially useful if you're painting a card and don't want the colors spilling over to the other side. Now let's draw the outlines. You might be surprised that I'm not actually drawing the tree itself, just the tiny ornaments inside it and the gift boxes at the bottom. You'll see why in just a moment. We'll be covering the entire area with a layer of blue paint, so we don't need to map out the branches just yet. You can keep things simple with just a few round ornaments inside the tree shape, but I decided to be a bit fancier and added a stocking and a gingerbread man. If you like to use my outline, you can download it on my Patreon. As always, I also posted a real-time recording of this tutorial over there. Our next step is to cover the tiny decorations with masking fluid, and if you've never used this fluid before, it's a great project to try it on. It's one of the best ways to preserve bright white paper on small details like ornaments when the background needs to be much darker. Masking fluid goes on like thin white paint, then dries out into a rubbery layer that sits on top of your watercolor paper and protects it while we paint over everything. So once the tree is finished, we'll simply peel it off or rub it off and paint inside each little shape. I'm using art masking fluid from Winsor & Newton and a rubber applicator called a color shaper. These are really inexpensive, easy to clean, and perfect for this kind of application. I don't recommend using any of your good brushes for masking fluid, as it can dry in the bristles and ruin them. Because watercolor doesn't show bright colors well on top of dark washes, this is really the easiest way to keep these tiny ornaments crisp and colorful until we're ready to paint them. If you don't have masking fluid, don't worry, you can add decorations later with some gouache or acrylic markers. Simply skip this step and let's move on to the fun part. It's time to cover the background with blue and start building our snowy effects. I'll show you a few different approaches, including white gouache and salt. First, I'm pre-wetting the entire area with clean water so the surface stays nicely wet for a few minutes. Then I'll brush blue paint all over, carefully painting around the gift boxes at the bottom. You can mask those as well, but this time I decided to simply work around them with my brush. That shape is large enough for me to be precise. Use any vivid blue you love here. I'm starting with my favorite phthalo blue green shade, and I'm also adding some aqua green from Winsor & Newton. I might even add a touch of purple in a bit, just for fun. Keep this first layer fairly light. Once the whole area is covered, let's switch to a darker blue. Something like indigo or indothrone blue will allow us to deepen the middle section where the tree will be. You don't have to be exact here, just imagine a loose triangular shape and apply strokes of your darkest blue all over. The ornaments are safely protected under the masking fluid, so you can paint freely over them. Now, if you have some salt nearby, this is a great moment to use it. Just sprinkle a little bit in a few spots. I'm adding mine on the top right and bottom left corners. The salt will push the pigment away and create beautiful frosty texture as it dries. This is one of the reasons I love watercolor. It invites these happy little experiments. And if you're interested in learning more about salt effects and how to create texture, I have a fun tutorial where we use this technique to paint a broccoli. I'll leave a link to it in the video description below. While the salt is still working, grab some white gouache, load a large brush or maybe an old toothbrush if you want, and gently splatter white all over the damp blue wash. Because the blue paint is still wet, the gouache will soften and blend, creating a dreamy, hazy snowfall effect. Later, I'll show you another method on dry paper for much sharper, more defined snowflakes. Now you can also keep dropping in touches of other colors as your paint dries out. Here I've added a bunch of purple, and you can also add a few soft lines of white color near the horizon and at the bottom. It adds even more visual interest to your background. It's important to leave everything now to dry out completely and come back when the entire surface is bone dry. I realize it looks really messy at this stage. Trust the process. Once we add the snowy branches, it will all come together. For the snow, I recommend using opaque white gouache. It gives much better coverage compared to watercolor white. I'm using zinc white from Winsor & Newton, which lets a little bit of blue show through. I like that soft effect, but something like titanium white will give you even brighter, cleaner whites. I'm loosely following some reference photos that I found online. I've included a few in the video description, paying attention to how snow actually sits on the branches. Depending on the type of pine tree, branches can point slightly up or down. I prefer the kind that curves downward, as if the snow is gently pulling them with its weight. When you look at the image closely, each branch shape is a bit like an arm. It starts near the center of the tree. From the trunk, it stretches outward, almost like with fingers of snow hanging down. I'm improvising these shapes with my smaller brush, fitting in as many branches as I can between the ornaments. Once you've added a good layer of these snowy branches, let everything dry out again, but in the meantime, we'll move on to painting the gift boxes at the bottom. Let's start with your favorite reds. I decided to use Quinacridone red and permanent Alizarin crimson, slowly and carefully covering the first set of gift boxes, painting very carefully around the white ribbons. This is called negative painting technique, meaning we're painting around the light object, in this case a ribbon and the bow, revealing them in the process by applying red paint all around. On some other boxes, I'll do the opposite. I'll keep them white and only paint the ribbons red. For the big round box in the center, I'm going to use ochre with a bit of brown color. This is called Quinacridone Scarlet, just for the shadows. This is the same color combination I'll use later for the gingerbread man and the star on top of the tree. I'll also add a touch of soft blue on the white ribbons to suggest some gentle shadows and a better sense of three-dimensional form. Once the boxes are dry, we're ready to remove the masking fluid, and I recommend using a retractable eraser. Try not to use your fingers as you can accidentally smudge the surrounding paint. Just gently rub over each shape and watch how crisp and bright the ornaments appear. Now we can paint inside them. Use your favorite festive colors. I'm adding plenty of red on the round ornaments and also the stocking. And I'm going to use that same gold ochre plus scarlet mix for the star and the gingerbread man. Feel free to experiment here, add any colors you love. I actually decided to add a touch of phthalo green, it's a really vivid green from Winsor & Newton, to a few ornaments for some extra contrast and visual interest. And at this stage, you can remove the masking tape and add a few finishing touches to bring everything together. I'll start by adding a bit more scarlet to the star-shaped ornament and also carefully draw a little face on the gingerbread man. This is the most satisfying part. Some extra details on the gift boxes are always a nice touch. I'm using a 00 Chronos synthetic brush to paint a few thin strings and lines, just a little bit of extra detail here, and you don't need to use watercolor for this part. Fine liners, markers, or even thin watercolor pencils work perfectly for these small details. And of course, we can use a little bit more snow, so let me show you two of my favorite methods. The first comes from my folk art decorative painting practice. All you need is some creamy white gouache and the tip of a pencil. Activate your white gouache by adding a little bit of water so it resembles a yogurt consistency. Dip the pencil tip into the paint and tap tiny crisp dots of snow all around the tree. A white pencil works especially well for this because it won't leave extra graffiti on paper. And the second option I wanted to show you is a jelly roll pen. Mine is from Sakura. This is the easiest, most stress-free way to add snow on top of your painting. You can create delicate snowflakes, draw extra ornaments, or add patterns like I did on the stocking. You can even write a message or your signature if this is a card you plan on giving away. Just make sure the layer underneath is completely dry before you start. Next week, we'll be back with more traditional watercolor techniques as we paint a large holiday wreath step by step. So don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends who enjoy watercolor and mixed media, and in the meantime, you can check out last year's wreath project here on YouTube and learn about my favorite watercolor pigments for Christmas compositions. I'll leave a link in the video description. Thank you as always for watching and painting with me. Check out the real-time version of this tutorial on Patreon, and I'll see you next week with more watercolor magic.